welcome to healthy and holy conversations. Where we come to you monthly, seems like bi-monthly, because I got something coming up in 2 weeks to talk about spirituality and emotional wellness for the Black church, for the Black faith community. So we're sitting at these intersections. And this intersection tonight is one that I wish I knew more about. And so I'm about to find out about it. And I don't profess to know everything. So, but it was necessary to talk about because if we don't talk about it, then what happens, So we leave stuff out. And I'm honored to have who I have with me, trying to make sure that y'all can see and hear me. Because there was a lot of people that wanted to come on. I feel like I got two famous people because as soon as I put their pictures up, I got all the likes and shares and all of that. So again, welcome to Healthy and Holy Conversations. Tonight, I'm actually going to read bios because I want to respect people. Can't be goofy. I know I'm gonna get like Margaret crazy. Read a piece of the bio. I'm still gonna put my spin on it. So my first is my sister, my friend. We cut up together. We've been cutting up together for girls been almost a decade.
Over 10 years. I met you in 2020.
Oh, guys. Yeah. So over a decade of cutting up. Over a decade of cutting up. So the great, the amazing, if I say the most reverend, I don't know, they might get me. So but that reverend, she got it up there too. Amber Lowe-Woodfork. And so I want to honor her. But my sis is coming tonight. This is who Afrofuturism queen. That's how I see her, because I have tried to follow her with it as soon as I started getting into it after Lovecraft Country. We're gonna talk about that tonight. But she is ordained with the CME Church, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I almost slipped in my church history and said the other one, but they are Christian Methodist. And she is currently pursuing her Doctor of Philosophy and Religious Studies from Indiana University. And then my favorite is she's married to Jerry, and she got Miss Priss who be running her life. So that's really the bio. That's right there. So that's what she's doing. Miss Priss might pop up tonight. I don't know. She might show up.
In Atlanta. Yeah. She's in Atlanta with her dad.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. She welcome to come because she run y'all. That's what she does. So if she got something to say, she can. And then we have with us Dr. Phillip Butler. By the way, I will be calling them Amber and Phillip tonight unless they tell me to call them by their formal titles, because again, this is a conversation. But to be respectful, because it's Philip's first time. Hopefully it is not his last time on the conversation. Dr. Phillip Butler is an international scholar, and he is. I put his work up. So if y'all honored him and went and bought the book for his birthday, that man all over the world. International scholar who focuses at the intersections of neuroscience. Y'all gonna get to hear it tonight. Technology, spirituality, and Blackness. And I know some of y'all like, how can you? Because you can. He wrote a whole book about it. He is the founder of the Sequel Project, distinctly Black conversational artificial intelligence. Am I reading that right? With mental health capacities, yes. So and these will be up on the website for you to go read their bios thoroughly after tonight. Dr. Butler is a partner director at ELIF's AI Institute, where he leads the 80/20 project, where the institute works to change how computers see people, relate to cultural iterative languages, making sure I correct that later, and build the bones for data ownership model that hopefully creates a relational framework for the way AI is made around the globe. So that's huge. So he is also the author of Black Transhuman Liberation Theology. Please get it. I started reading it and I said, okay, I got to take my time and digest it. And his most recently, he was the editor of the Critical Black Futures, Speculative Theories and Explorations. He had published in journals such as the Black Scholar, the Journal of Posthuman Studies, and the Journal for Future Studies. He is currently working on his second monograph, Still Black Posthuman, A Theory of Uncertainty and Disorder. We're going to talk about, I'm going to throw up uncertainty because you put that on your bio. You did that. We're going to talk about that tonight too. And so welcome to the conversation. I am super excited to have y'all. And the first question tonight is, truthfully, what is Afrofuturism? Because I don't want people to walk away tonight with the way people have came and landed recently in Black faith community about what they don't know.
Yeah. And
Okay.
definitions matter. Listen, Cornell West said definitions matter.
Definitions matter.
Um, yeah, I always like to point to the way that Yatasha Womack defines it in her book. It's titled Afrofuturism, the World of Black Sci-Fi and Fantasy Culture. She says that Afrofuturism is a form of cultural criticism, like key emphasis on cultural criticism, and it's also a liberative framework for Black imagination and myth making. That's also important. Imagination, myth making, because you're doing some counter myth making to the myths that were created, that uphold modernity and what have you. Natasha Womack describes Afrofuturism as a combination of science, historical fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy, Afrocentricity, and magic realism with non-Western beliefs. She says that it is a total re-envisioning of the past and speculation about the future that is rife with cultural critiques. Basically, the way I approach Afrofuturism from that definition is it's an act of counter creation, right? So it's in response to dominant myths, theories, images, ideas that permeate really modernity and white supremacy, right? So Afrofuturism is a space where Black folks can counter create, can counter mythologize, and also counter dominant Western hegemonic white discourse, basically, right? And you use the arts to do it, you use music to do it, you use film to do it, you use preaching to do it, right? It's a space to counter create and to counter dominant hegemonic discourse about Blackness and whiteness and all that, right? But
So it's
I
like
want
something Black folks need to be into. Black people need
yeah,
to be into this. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, and Afrofuturism. I mean, I love it because so when it comes to sci-fi, for example, like we're used to in many science fiction films and even literature, white people are always imagined in the future, right? And Black people,
Mm.
tend to not be, imagined or thought of in the future or part of the apocalypse, whatever, right? Black folks ain't there, or have not been there. Because of the way that whiteness imagines, humanity, right, or whatever. I mean, so Afrofuturism is an intervention into that. It's to say we're gonna be here. We here now. We're gonna be here in the future, and you cannot have a world without Black people. It's just not possible.
Amber called it an intervention. So Phillip, like this
Intervention.
intervention of Afrofuturism, because your work speaks to you. I mean, you basically made it an intervention and came up with a whole. I don't know if you came up with it, but it feels like you came up with help define a craft, the theology behind it. So can you go more into it about
Yeah, sure.
theology?
So
Yeah.
not for so I'm grateful that Amber brought up right Tasha Womack's work, right? Because I'll just piggyback on that with Reynaldo Anderson's work, who's kind of
Yes.
been kind of crafting like this umbrella in terms of like Afrofuturism 1.0 with like Mark Derry and kind of like the initial kind of white boys attempting to name something, and then how Black folks have moved in this 2.0 phase, and you've seen like a lot of culture, like it's a cultural criticism, as Amber pointed out. You have folks engaging in these types of counter narratives and these speculative stories, and you have folks who are theorizing it, and so creating this kind of high culture around it. And so if you are imagining it and putting it in literature and making it so that people aspire towards these different types of imaginations as they are presented, then we move into this kind of 3.0 where I think as Renato talks about, moves into kind of on the continent itself. What does it mean then when Africans engage in this type of Africology, as well as this futuristic mode of way of being from the vantage point of the continent itself, and then utilizing those resources and those connections and those different ways of doing things. And so, like, I think even kind of within the theological framework that I've kind of worked with in this transhumanist space, I think in many ways, right, the counter narrative I think is important, but I think what I do with my work intentionally is project ahead, because I think in many cases when we talk about science fiction we talk about even technological advancement as it pertains to, you know, like ChatGPT or whatever the latest thing that's happening in physics right now, right? This is the workings of, you know, like somebody else's imagination and us kind of working within that, you know, within the vacuum of that space. So what does it mean then to imagine something that is not only your own, but then projects beyond even the limitations, and even the what seem to be like the natural, and even logical kind of trajectories that are placed before us with somebody else's imagination. So, you know, if I think one of the things I like to say is that if you don't create your own future, you'll be bound to somebody else's, right? And so, what does it
Mhm.
mean then to project beyond what anybody else is putting out there and do so in a way that not only do you create your own future, but now you put them in the position where they have to respond to you, or where if they don't, they either become an embodiment of the racist and white supremacist modes of attempting to stay within their own framings, or they just fall behind because the things that you're putting out there and the work that you're doing is so far ahead of them that you know that they become the ones who might be subject to your future.
Yeah, I love what you said about high culture. Like I love that. Can I add one more thing,
Please add
Margaret?
it.
If you don't
Y'all
mind,
please
and
add.
then Phillip. Like, so your intervention, I think both of our interventions, Phillip, are they pertain to religion and theology and the human and what it means to be human and pushing the limits of what it means to be human, and how that category was framed to begin with, right? Like the human, right? But I think another intervention that I think about for my own work is, so in the term Afrofuturism or Afrofuture, future is important, right? Time is important. So what I'm doing in my work is thinking about different how, first of all, like, what is time, right? And how has the concept of time been used as a colonial tool, um, right? That maps, space and place, and that also, controls people's ideas of a future, right? If you colonize time, then
Pause you
how
right.
does that distort?
Pause you right there.
I'm
Don't
sorry.
hurt. I'm gonna pause you right there, Amber, because I
Go
really
ahead.
need. If you gonna talk about colonizing time, stay right there. Y'all can do all of that right here on this platform because
Yeah.
y'all been through in white supremacy. And my
Mm-hmm.
belief behind that is we're bathed in it. We really don't know how to operate outside of it unless
Mm-hmm.
we take heed to what scholars are letting us know. And that's where this topic came. So I want you to jump right back in. But how, like, please go through colonizing time because somebody's gonna be like,
Yeah. Yeah, because first of all, I like the term Western hegemonic time, right? So the idea of a 7 day week or a 24 hour day, or the clock, right? Clock time. These are colonial constructs, by way of Western European, expansion, right? And so one way that Western Europe was able to expand and conquer the world was through the use of maps and clocks, right? And so if you're taking people who have one notion of time, whether it be, cyclical or recursive, and you're bringing them into a notion of time as linear, um, in the ways that, Western Europeans, view time as linear or progressive, then that does something to a people. Like, that does something to them epistemologically, ontologically, spiritually. Their religious sensibilities are affected, right? Like, if you take them out of their sense of time, like, that's an apocalyptic move in a sense, right? So my intervention, and what I'm thinking about more and more is, okay, like, how, first of all, like, what is time? How can we think about time as a colonial tool? And then what does it mean to imagine, being and knowing beyond time, right? Or beyond Western linear hegemonic time, right? Is
so I,
where I'm moving.
and I have a question for both of you. So I I know people. I don't believe. I hate the notion that people say black people don't read. I think that's just insulting. But on the other hand, this is a newer space for us, even though it shouldn't be. Like, it's so much literature on Afrofuture. It's so much. But was it Hulu or no FX? Just dropped a whole series. I won't say how I feel about it. But dropped a whole series.
Oh, you talking
Talk-
about the Butler?
Yeah. So
Mm.
Kendrick, that speak that if anything we got out of that is how colonized time has really jacked us up.
Mm-hmm.
And pulled us in and out of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a spiritual part, like pulled us in and out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you all speak to that? Because we get frozen in trauma. Here's that for me, trauma looks like we're getting pulled in and out of time every time. Like every time I get in the trauma marker, every time I get stuck, every time something happens in my community, like Nichols is gonna be stuck. Nichols in Memphis is gonna be stuck in time with us, right? Just like Trayvon Martin in time. We still celebrating his 20th birthday just passed. Just like George Floyd, just like Breonna Taylor, just like so
Mm.
can y'all talk about that time being pulled back and forth in and out of time and how that looks inside of what we're talking about tonight?
No, I think that's a great question. So I actually just finished this piece for the Black Scholar. Don't kick me off, right? But it's titled "On Demon Time."
Oh, you fine.
Um, but
You
Listen,
you fine.
I stay on demon time, Phillip. Okay,
hey, hey, so
I'm gonna
but
be on demon
right,
time when I get off the same. Be on demon time. Okay.
hey, listen, I hear you, and so this it's on demon time because it's the idea of the demonic within a Western framework is that which you cannot explain or that which you cannot control. And when we
Mm.
talk about blackness and being something kind of in this space, I think a lot of scholars talk about fugitivity and right this idea of blackness being something that is always escaping, right? And
Yes.
so there's this idea, but even that is still not freedom, right? It's still getting away from something like maroonage is not freedom, right? And so when we talk about moving into a different time, it also speaks to what it means then to work within one's own internality, right? And then what does it mean for Black folks to work within the time of their own internal space and then do that in a collective way? And so and then but then so it's like it's one thing for Black folks to kind of quote unquote sync up onto demon time, but I think it's something else to engage in demon time as an act of not just rebellion but intentional freedom to say in the middle of whatever the hell we got going on, I'm choosing to or reorient myself according to my own kind of framing as a means, knowing that my embodiment and therefore my internal framing is simultaneously going to be that which would allow for the deterioration of what has historically been the pulling in and out of time. Because Black folks have been jolted into kind of this somebody else's time and somebody
Yep.
else's way of life and somebody else's way of doing things, let alone what does it mean then to then kind of being brought back to one's body and then having to deal with that trauma there. And so what does it mean to wrestle with that trauma, befriend that, and then orient oneself within that space and move in this trajectory opposite of and pretty much pulling the rest of the world with you, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Woo!
I
Oh,
was.
all right. Let them digest it. Let them digest it.
Yeah.
Because again, demon time, you can say what you need here, but even defining it, a lot of our communities don't even know this difference. They don't even know the difference in time. They think this is just made up. Like again, Lovecraft Country is where I was like, what is this? Like, and I mean, just stuck in there. But we watching there where our people are getting pulled in and out of time. The
Mm-hmm.
beauty of it is that the writers decided, well, we're gonna throw us future, but we're gonna have to hit it back. I mean, in and out, and we got to bring all of that with us, as Phillip said, all of that. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I go here, I'm bringing all of that with me, pain, sunshine, whatever, and it gets locked in our psyche. So sitting here working in it's demon time. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Working in demon time. One, I don't like the name because I feel like we done labeled it as a deeper version of CPT.
But no, but I
Like
think
my
what
good work.
I I think I like the term demon time because if I'm here, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, Phillip. I think you're referring to what I call Western hegemonic time as demon time, right?
So nah. So what I'm saying is,
Okay.
so like if we think about like you think about in the pandemic, right? Demon time is that is activities normally left after 10 p.m. That which is already
Okay.
demonized, right?
So you
And
mean
then
in the pop culture sense, like demon
it,
time? Okay. Okay.
yes, but then I mean, if you want to go like within more of like the religious space, like we could think about the ways in which Western African, and even just kind of more broader, like the larger umbrella of different African traditions have already been labeled as demonic, right? And so
Right.
then, just to be yourself, you've already been labeled as the demon, right? Just to
Hmm.
being black,
Yeah,
right? And so in order
I
to just
got
live,
you.
to be, and so this is one way of saying, just be the monster, just be the monster that they say you are.
Yeah,
What happens if you just be that monster?
I
Be,
got you.
and so leaning into that, into its fullness, knowing that in some ways what they're trying to, like, if they say, like, if you angry and you black, that's they're calling to the space to know of the wisdom that comes from the anger of being black in this space. But they won't let you, they don't want you to be angry because there's a wisdom as to why you are angry in this space. And so to
Hmm.
live out of those particular emotionalities, and to live out of one's being that they've already villainized. But that is also the thing that is empowering you, right? Because to be yourself in a space that already suggests you are a demon would then suggest that for you to be an angel in that space would be them. You'd have to be them, and you
Yeah,
can't ever be them. And to be them is a loss of yourself in that way. And so go ahead and be what they label you as, knowing that in that within that sense, the divinity that lives inside of you will spring forth, and they'll call it something else, but they can't control it. And because it
hmm,
can't be controlled, it therefore is a rupture in the linear time that they are attempting to bind people to.
yeah, yeah. No, I got you. And I was just talking to one of my advisors. We're reading Enoch and some other apocalyptic texts, right?
Mhm.
And one thing that came out of our conversation today is that for colonized people, time is always marked by acts of wickedness and trauma, right? So whenever you read the book of Daniel, whenever you read, Enoch and the apocalypse of the weeks and the book of Watchers and whatnot, time is always the way that they identify time is always around, something happening in the empire, that's oppressive, right? Or it's just a traumatic event, period, right? So what does it mean then, first of all, for one sense of time to be organized around trauma? And then what does it mean then to move beyond that to another, sense of time, right? Is what I'm trying to, like I say, like we're saying right now, like, work through right now is it possible to imagine time beyond time? Like what does that look like?
Right.
And I think that's what, Lovecraft Country tries to do. That's what Butler tried to do, or tries to do, throughout her corpus. Even Toni Morrison, right, who's not categorized as speculative, but I read her as speculative, especially Beloved. It's all about time, moving in and out of, one's memory and slavery and rememory, right? That's not linear. That's a cyclical, recursive kind of time, right? Yeah, like what does it mean to just riffing off of you, Phillip, like to move, like to imagine time beyond time? Like what is that? And can we are our minds and imagination so colonized that we can't imagine that? You know, do we have
And
to have language to to
Oh yeah.
construct something like that? I don't know.
No,
and
I
I
mean it's
wonder for
definitely.
both of you, I wonder this just for Margaret. I'm just curious to know because you just brought it up, Amber. Like, is it possible that we can reconstruct this? And I'll take it deeper. Is it possible that we can reconstruct it without destroying each other? Because there's a lot of truth that has to come to light in deconstructing with this to reconstruct it into a healthy state in a way that, for me, I see as power
Yeah,
being
I
displayed by
mean,
voice.
I
Is
would.
that possible?
Yeah, I mean, I would even say, is it possible to imagine ourselves in the future, or future time, or time beyond time, without replicating the very things, that we just escaped from, or that, that were oppressive to begin with, right? um is it possible to imagine an alternative without then creating another version, of the same ultimacy and the same, totalizing reality that we just escaped from, right? Like, is that possible? One thing that Butler, for example, does in her literature is she plays with that tension, right? So you're in these other worlds. Like for example, in Dawn, everyone should read Dawn. It's a crazy book. It is freaky as hell. One thing she does, like first of all, you don't know where you don't know like where this story takes place. Is it out of space? Is it on a spaceship? Like where is the story taking place, right? But it's in the future. It's in a future time. But again, the same things that took place on Earth that led to its devastation and ruin show up still in this future space, right? And she's intentional, and she's intentional about painting this world where the same things that held us in hostage on Earth show up here now, because she's trying to raise the question: is it possible to even create something new without replicating it somewhere else, right? I don't know.
Ah, Philip,
Yeah.
I went to look up something, but I think you probably just about to say it. But you offered
Not
something in your intro pertaining to
so.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So, Black transhumanism is undergirded by Black posthumanism.
Yeah.
To I think at least in the Black transhumanism I outlined, I imagine there's more. I hope that there are more, and I look forward to seeing more. At the same time, right? For me, Black posthumanism is an anti-humanism, and what do I mean by that? Right? We talk. For me, the human is a cybernetic technology of whiteness, meaning that
Yes.
the idea of what it means to be a human, this kind of Vitruvian man, this kind of like this white male figure, this detached, emotionless, autonomous being, right? That is somehow the pinnacle of perfection for white people, becomes the only mode of humanity, and right, and then you have degrees away from this figure. White women, right, due to proximity, and the further and further away you get away from this, you become less and less human, or you
Mm-hmm.
become monstrous or superhuman, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so within this framing, right? For me, for Black folks, I don't think Black folks are human because I don't think white people are human. Again, I think this is a technology used to maintain stratification. And so for the difference that I label it as people, and it sounds redundant, but I differentiate it this way: a human is a universal construct. A person is a complex and local being. Right, a person has a history. A person has attachment to the land. A person has a connection to other people. A person is from somewhere specifically. They have a specific type of embodiment, right? A person is very, 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 very multifaceted in this way, and there is no particular archetype. There's no center, right? Within a person, people are people, and they congregate together and they live together, right? And so the complexity of what it means to be a person has to then allow for this kind of disintegration of what is a kind of unified figure, a unified construct, which also suggests that there are as infinite as infinite as the potentialities of what a person might be. That would also suggest that there are that many infinite potentialities of time. And what I
Mm-hmm.
think we're talking about in terms of creating a new time, we already live in different times. Like I've never been in your body, you've never been in my. You don't. We don't live in the same house. We don't wear the same shoes. Like you know what I'm saying. Like all these different things that make us different allow for a different time signature. And when we talk about time, like on from physics standpoint, right? Time is a 3D is at least as we understand it currently, or what is projected before us. It is a three-dimensional thing of space, right, and physicality, and the ways in which we are able to determine, right, how things pass over this, right, whether it's distance, whether it's like and so then you have this thing called time dilation, right? You go to the top
Mm-hmm.
of a mountain, time passes super fast. You go to the bottom of the mountain, close to sea level, things slow down tremendously.
Yep.
But and so you could talk about this in connection to a physical space. You could talk about this in connection to your own physical body. And so if we do that in terms of physical body, each individual physical body has a different time signature. Let alone when we start breaking down like the various like emotions that we have. If you have a different emotion in the same body, you could argue that's a different time signature. And so now we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about having to hone and be not one with, but at the very least make room for like a multiplicity of time even within yourself. And so what does it mean then to try to come back to and so I think it adds complexity to it. It makes it much more difficult to talk about. But in terms of speaking squarely to what you were saying, Amber, I honestly don't know if I care if we reproduce it. Because to me it's like, all right, do we want Black people to have a space of ownership or not? And if we do, then somebody might have to not be on the top level. It may not be an equitable space all the time. Like I think we're not necessarily comfortable with the idea that we can do and perpetuate certain types of harm. Like even our relationship with the divine figure, right? God is, if we live in a relationship with disproportionality the disproportionality suggests that there's harm being done, or at the very least we're in an oppressive relationship. And I know it may not be a favorable kind of framing, but if we're below somebody, we're not on the same level as them, which suggests that we have to potentially either be harmed or placed in harmful situations. And so then what does it mean then to either reorient yourself with this divine figure? What does it mean to reorient yourself in space-time around people who look like you or don't look like you? And then what does it mean then to continue to try to build a new reality where Black people live and thrive? And like, I'm just curious about, can we get there and then maybe start talking about how we begin to map out the equitable, less harmful spaces that might come from that?
So I don't.
Yeah, I
Y'all
wonder sometimes. Yeah.
y'all both just took me out. Like people like that's good. Like so, because before you move, Amber, I want to sit right there just to think about it in the space of reframing. I'm gonna throw this word in, and then y'all can have a feel. I promise you, I'm gonna sit back and just sip my tea. Because all of what Phillip said is, you basically just said we finna reframe power, and power is inclusive of everything you just said, from time to personhood to systematic problems. And we need to reframe that before we even get to equitable spaces. And Amber, jump whenever you're ready to go, because you just killed everything inside of me. Been
She about to
hollering
get me.
space for
She
years.
gonna get me.
No, no, I've been wrestling with for a while now. Like, is it possible? Are hierarchies just natural, right? Like, is there any species of people, or animals, or just organisms, period, right, where hierarchies don't exist? That's number one. Are hierarchies just natural to existence? Number one. Number two, do hierarchies have to be, harmful, and inequitable, right? That's, I don't know, like that's my struggle right now. Is the whole like issue of hierarchy.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I want to go back to another thing that you said too, Phillip, about the human, it being an invention, basically a technology. And that's hard for people to grapple with, because we take the human as something natural, as a given, right? I'm a human being, right? But I mean, for the way that I study religion, the human is a category that is made only through the enslavement of Black people, right? Like, Western European males figured themselves as human over and against the African that they came in contact with, right, at the dawn of the slave trade. So going back to, for example, the Portuguese, sailors and merchants who were coming in contact, with different African peoples in the 1300s, right? So when you see someone worshiping, for example, fetish objects, and you're questioning, how in the world can you say that the divine is, encompassed in a tangible material object, when we think that the divine is transcendent, right, beyond materiality? Like, you're not a human. You're that's something. You're not rational, right? You're not rational. So the marker of a human then is rationality for the white Western European male. So I'm glad, we're bringing up, we're troubling this idea of what it means to be human, because that's a very modern, concept or category, right? That only exists over and against viewing the African as not a human, as not having or possessing the faculties of reason, of not knowing, the right order of materiality, right? So we have to talk about how it's not just a category, but it's a category that's wrapped up in religion. Like it has religious, implications as well. Because so yeah.
Nah, and I'm just even to like add to what you're saying, like I think it was funny, like these fetish objects become problematic, but then they make paintings and busts that look just like them.
Exactly.
And
Precisely.
right. And so, like, I think what's even funnier though is that, like, I went to Paris last year, and you had to go to the Louvre. You don't go to the Louvre, you probably ain't do it right. So I was like,
You
all
didn't
right,
go
let's
to
go to the
Paris.
Louvre. what I'm saying? Hey, but niggas was in Paris. But
Exactly.
hey, but real talk, like, so you go to the Louvre and you go in that joint and you go to the top floor kind of first, almost it's almost like it just makes sense. And everything on the top floor is European and is everything is white. The only black thing I saw was a like a black marble statue and it was a slave. And there were other black marble statues, but you have to read the name piece. The name piece says something else. But the only black marble statue that was black was a slave. But
Mm,
then you go downstairs and then you see this, you see stuff from the Middle East, you see stuff from Africa. You got the big Egyptian exhibit. But then they at the time we were there, the Egyptian exhibit was kind of blown up, and so you begin to see similar busts, similar frames of art that depict a particular group of people reflecting themselves back onto themselves. And so not
mm-hmm,
only do we see like these religious framings of like, the Jesus figure as well as the virgin and the mother, these kind of framings, but now you go down there and then you see the Egyptian gods with their melanated skin and they look just like the people who made them, which
mm-hmm,
again speaks to, like, I think we talk about this idolatrous space of like making these images, and even obviously it's been squarely kind of space within like critiquing like Africanity, but and we talk about this. What does it mean then to create images of yourself as a means to big up yourself, as a means to re-emphasize your worth, as a means to reassert like a reflection of who you are in ways that you might be in the world? And so if the reflections of you in this world are salvific, right? If the reflections of you in this world demonstrate the complexities of your emotionality and so on and so forth, but then everyone else is robbed of that, who are they to then worship, or who are they then to make meaning out of, right? If not you, right? And
mm-hmm.
so I think there's something there about what it means to replicate oneself, and then look at oneself as something worthy of being placed on a bust. Like, I think so. All right, just the last thing, real quick. If you go to the Palace of Versailles, that is one of the most wildly opulent things I've ever seen in my life. It's like you
Mm,
hate it, but you love it at the same time because it's so crazy. But if you go down one of those aisles into these corridors, it's basically a bust of like every great Frenchman who was a war hero or whatever, and they got whole like murals on the walls in this house of them just slaughtering people, like like you got Napoleon's art, they're just killing folks, and it's like this is what we
in
magnify
God's
right
name.
now, you know
In
what I'm
God's
saying?
name.
And so it's wild that like that Western European people or white folks can have this, but then you go down into the continent, it's not allowed. It's not a good thing. And then black folks internalize that we can't make these things. We can't replicate ourselves this way. We can't see ourselves in this manner. And so I'm curious about the ways in which we might be able to do something like that.
Yeah. Well, that going back to Lovecraft Country, I think it's episode 8 or 7,
Hmm.
the I Am
The I
episode.
am episode,
Oh yeah,
yes.
that's
Oh my God! Like
yeah.
they did that. So is it okay if we move there, Margaret?
Oh yeah, no,
Um,
y'all listen. You say I put it on mute because I knew it. I started something, but I want I
yeah,
want I want us to move there because this idea of self, eh, and I was gonna say I kind of know where Phillip might go, but I don't. After y'all done broke down, human honey, I got to go back and listen to myself. I was like, I'm a human. Like I done killed all my little hashtags, uh, but I love it though. But this idea of I am and how we take the scripture, we take what I am, how we are build ourselves off of well, should I get kicked off my own platform? We don't build ourselves off of a Eurocentric model of some words that they done took and redacted and rewrote and put out to make sure that they are still on top. What is I am looking like? Because episode 8 of Love Care Country. Y'all go, it's still on HBO. That
yeah,
one season, but we know why they took it off. Thank you, Courtney Vance, for slipping up on the radio, uh, telling everybody why. But that led into the why too. Like it literally synergized. I don't think just black women, even though it was about a black woman, it was synergized black people.
yeah.
Like see how powerful we could move through time, in time, and be there and come back with that. Because it wasn't just the pain she brought back.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we can
Yeah,
move. We can move right there.
yeah. No, like that. First of all, like if let me say this. There is a book first, right? So it's the show is based on a book, written by, I think his name is Matt Ruff. And the way that Matt Ruff wrote the book, you wouldn't even know it's Black people, period, in this book, because it's so flat. I think he wrote it in that way so that it could be adapted later on. Like I think he wrote it with the intention that I want this to be picked up, right? So that, the producers can do what they will, with the characters. So that's my generous read of it. I'm being generous right now. Because again, like there are no signifiers in the book that anyone is Black other than you just saying they Black, right? But that's one thing. So, I said that to say that episode, what happens in that episode is not in the book. I don't think it is. I think that was added.
I read the book and I tried to find it.
I think Misha Green took some artistic license
as she should
in that episode with imaging the divine as a Black woman, right? Who's not only a Black woman, but she's a physicist, I think, or like an astrophysicist. The divine she's a scientist like that. I just still have no words about how important that episode is. And then the phrasing "I am" for me speaks to the Exodus narrative, where Moses asks the deity in the burning bush, who shall I say sent me? And the deity responds, I am that I am, sent. Tell Pharaoh that, I am that I am, sent you, right? And I don't profess to be a Hebrew scholar of the language, right? But I do some word study. I can do word study, right? And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that phrase "I am that I am" translates roughly to "I am becoming."
I am becoming. I'll be. I'll be that I will be.
Yes,
I'll be what I will be.
I'll be what I will be.
What I will be, which is now futuristic.
That's the most hood thing. That's the most hood thing God said. Like, I'll be what I'll be, guys.
I'll be what I'll be.
I'll be what I'll be.
Which means that I'm not stagnant. And if I want to bring it to the whole time thing, I'm not caught in linear time. Yes. Because I will be what I will be. I am becoming, and so we could talk about that, for hours, right? But I think it's important again to note right here that even the deity, rejects in some way the notion of this linearity of time, right? And so that makes space to image or to think of the divine as anything other than the ways in which whiteness has imaged itself, as the divine. If that makes sense, right?
It all makes complete sense, because even just speaking.
I'm gonna be where I'm at.
I'm gonna be where I'm at.
I'm gonna be where I'm at.
Oh, even as speaking of it, it literally threw me in futuristic thought. Like when y'all have literally, by the way, y'all have murdered tonight. Like, oh my God, because I'm sitting there like, what else have we messed up? By taking
the human time.
Y'all have killed
hierarchies.
Y'all murdered all of that, and it's beautiful. Because how are we taking it? Because still moving back to this notion of self, and I want you to finish because I am. So I'll be what I will be. I am becoming. Mm-hmm. But when we see that, because we take on this narrative from Exodus, we take on the Exodus narrative as Black people, right? Mm-hmm. And we act like we got to stay where we done been. Like we can't evolve past and get out.
Move.
And when
move, saints.
I love pairing this with Hebrews. I think it was the Hebrews 11 or Hebrews 12. Like, God will be the same, yesterday, today, forever. If God's the same, but God's always changing, right? Then this is where Butler comes, or
exactly. God has changed.
God has changed, right? And so, and we talk about this humanity thing, and we talk about like, I've been playing around with this idea of fixedness, right? And how we think nations are fixed. Right. And we think, that the human is fixed, or we think that who we are is fixed. But, these nations, they haven't always been what we understand them to be. And they surely ain't going to be what they think they are today in the future either. And so, this idea of fixedness, I think it is a useful term to understand what people attempt to do with power, maybe, but a
Mm-hmm.
recognition that fixedness cannot overcome, either the wheels of change, the tides of change, or just God as change suggests that something is going to go ahead and disrupt that. Or, I think this is where kind of like the Jewish concept of like the day of the Lord, like this breaking in, like we think it's going to come from above, but the reality is, if this, all right, maybe I'll just preface this: I'm a physicalist, right? So this is not a materialist, which says that like there's a one-to-one correlation, physical and spiritual. But my physicalism suggests that whatever we got here is all we gonna have, right? Even this concept of like going somewhere else is still within physics. The energy ain't finna be destroyed or created. Whatever we
Yeah.
are is finna go somewhere else. And so in this idea, like there is fixedness only exists in the moment that we say it, but because after that moment, everything else is continually changing. And so I think if we embrace this notion of shifting, changing, uncertainty, right, or disorder, because I think fixedness also suggests a level of order. But I think if disorder becomes the high point in terms of how we understand and orient ourselves to the world, then I think it will allow us to embrace like this. Yeah, I think embrace the chaos that comes with, again, going back to this idea of demon time.
You said orientation, and fixedness implies fixedness is connected to the idea of orientation, because the idea of fixedness wants you to orient yourself a certain way in the world, right? And that orientation then must be fixed, and then there's no way to transcend that fixedness. That's a trick of the enemy. That's a trick of the enemy. The idea of of categories, being fixed, the human being fixed, right, or time being fixed, because it leaves no space for imagination. It leaves no space, for counter creation. It leaves no space to, to undo, to undo all the things that were created again, to order the world in a certain way. Yeah.
So it moves us out of flow. We
I'm
can't.
sorry.
It'll move us out of flow. It'll move us out of spaces where we can flow.
Mm.
And I guess in the last week, I watched how we have, well, lack of better time, we have demonized creativity and labeled it instead of moving and trying to figure out what is the understanding behind the energy put into it. We ain't even taken the time to look for that. But y'all saying that even beyond this week, like this been going on. Like that's what I mean. I said like this is it's etching away, because again, if I got to come and orient, somebody's telling me where right orientation is.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with a lot of different modalities. I try to stick with relational modalities, and it's y'all just blew my brain with that, because even in doing like ancestral work, even in doing work around power and ethics of power, they even try to tell you directionally which way you need. Like this is the direction of face this way, do this way, orient yourself here, come back to center. But I argue this. What I don't think Black people really know where center is, because we're always getting jolted into something else and moved into something else, and this is what needs to be right, because we still sit in that paradigm of white is right. Like
Yeah.
white supremacy culture still running it. So
We
can we?
had an idea of center and of a sacred center, right? We had
Yeah.
that idea pre-colonial contact, but that was, disrupted. Yeah,
Y'all ever seen everything everywhere all
everything
at once?
everyone wants.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love the donut concept, right? I think it's framed in the movie as like a move towards nihilism, but I
Mm-hmm.
think there's more there in terms of what we can make from it meaning wise, right? If there is no center, right, then there's nowhere else to look but here, like back at yourself. Because if you look towards a center where there's no center, of course there's going to be nothingness or whatever somebody else places in the center. But if nothing actually is at the center, then you had to go back and turn back inside, because you still are facing the center, some whatever that center is. Then
Mm-hmm.
if because I don't know, I like to teach in undergrads, because we get to this one point in the course and they be like, yo, um, what is nothingness, right? And I was like, and they couldn't necessarily grab that. But towards the end, it be like, yo, if nothingness is not nothing, because nothingness is a thing, then nothingness really is everything. And if
Mm-hmm.
and so if you can look in the center and see nothing, you can also see everything. And if you have to look at yourself and realize that there's no center there, then the nothingness that you think the emptiness you feel is actually everything that you feel, and which everything that you can and could be and are at the same time.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love any movie about different dimensions. I was at a conference just last week, and one of the keynote speakers, I'm gonna have to like do some more reading on this, but she argued that Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Doctor Strange movie, in any film basically that takes up the notion of of a multiverse,
Mhm.
they're only tapping into one theory of a multiverse, right? She says like five different theories, at least five different theories of how the multiverse, works, right? And the idea that whatever happens in one dimension affects whatever happens in a different one. That's just one like theory of the multiverse. I wonder what these. And she named the other four. I forgot what the hell she said. But I'm gonna look into it because I'm wondering. I was wondering in that space, and I'm still wondering now, like what those other theories are, and then why is it easier for Hollywood to take up this one idea of the multiverse over the other four, right?
Mm. Eh, I wonder. I wonder that too. Now that you said it, you making
Yeah,
me. Y'all know I love books. I go find something. This is not my genre, but
yeah.
y'all got me so my brain going because as I think about working with trauma in multiverse and how
Mm-hmm.
how are we moving between those spaces and telling people to get over it. Well, I can't get over time. I can't jump
Yeah.
and
You in my business right now, girl.
and I
You
mean
really are my business right now.
I just and how we moving it, like how we're inviting people to certainty in spaces where there cannot be certainty. It
Yeah.
has to be openness there. If you want me to heal, it's got to be wide open. So,
Right.
Amber, if I don't know if you know about literature that can speak to keeping us in the spaces of openness. And Phillip, when you read it, talking about models, particularly internal family systems, but it's other models there that'll get us there. But like this invite to tap into different dimensions, even though that ain't what we're trying to say, but to tap into different ego states or personalities, like, but for the betterment of this conversation, to tap into our own internal multiverse and move through it. Is there anything we can offer? Because y'all did not make this spooky or scary tonight in church. They put some scripture on it, so y'all gonna try to go back and say this ain't Bible, but and I throw some more scriptures at y'all too. But Amber put the
And why
number
does
one.
it have to be Bible though? Does it have to be Bible
Because
to be
guess
that?
what? That's what we stuck with. We say that's the whole book. But at the end of the day, it's so many sacred texts.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get on that because I won't get on.
Not right now. Not right now.
Uh, but you're asking like what can we point people to
Yeah,
or
like what can y'all point people to as far as like literature is concerned, as far as therapeutic modalities, whatever y'all got that can show people it is okay for y'all talking about multiverse. It's okay for multiplicity because
Yeah.
mm,
in the westernized thought, we living in a manual Kant state. Like, oh, everything gotta line up, everything has to sit in a
that
Unitarian state.
racist sucker?
Oh yeah, he
Man,
was
girl,
terrible.
He
it
was
has her.
terrible.
we got
Yo.
to sit in that in order to be right versus I am multiplicity and I'm made in
Right.
the image of God who is multiplicity. So why
Yeah.
can't I be multiplicity and live in this multifaceted space and understanding of myself so that I'm not presenting to you this one piece of me that you can beat down, tear down, and kill everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want to go first, Philip?
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
So I think Mark, I think you want this is what we talk about like IFS, right? So like
Yeah.
internal family systems therapy. I think one of the basic premises is that that we as people are multiple, we're not singular. Like so, like I'm Philip, I'm a dad, I'm a son, I'm a brother, right? I'm a professor. You know what I'm saying? I'm a husband. These types of things. At the very least, these different hats I wear you know what I'm saying, suggests that I'm already doing multiple things at once. But then we start talking about like that internal time signature again, right? So like what happens when I'm frustrated as a dad versus when I'm frustrated as a professor, right? They don't always feel the same. What happens when I feel, empowered in certain spaces, wearing these different hats? But then what does it mean then when the emotions that I'm feeling are attached to like a time, way before this one, when I'm in my teenage state, or like, when I'm a much younger version of myself, and how those different versions of myself now influence, right, this present most version of myself as well. And so we're talking about kind of time jumping as well as holding time, as well as kind of attempting to listen to either the wisdom or in many cases, right, being hijacked, right, by the very different emotions that we have. Like when we talk about, I think for folks that like movie Inside Out, right, like that little, there was a point
Yeah.
where the emotions, they became complex. It wasn't just happy, sad. They were happy and sad, right? They were frustrated and angry, and and there was multiple things happening at once. And so I think this is, we talk about our internal multiverse, in the sense that like there are multiple parts of me attempting to kind of reach the surface and either influence the surface or outright control who's driving the steering the ship, so to speak, right? And so what does it mean to not, and it's not like you don't need to, I don't think we want to hold them at bay. I think that is harmful to oneself. I think this is when we start building a relationship with the multiverse, right? And it's not, I don't think it's ever really about like this unitary thing so much as it is when we talk about like harmony, or like like just on a basic physiological level. Like your heart beats, and then has you have like this electrical heart field that goes in every direction 6 feet, right? So you talk about when you feel the vibes, you're probably feeling somebody's internal heart signature, right? And so when if that's the case, if folks got like multiple things coming to the surface, then you probably experiencing a conflicted heart signature at the very least. And so what does it mean for you to impact time by being, by just showing up with your body and your heart signature, let alone for you to wrestle with like the various modes of you that need your time and attention, just by being quiet or listening or building that relationships. I think also what we're talking about in terms of these multiverses, if we reject the multiplicity of ourselves, then we're also creating the distance, right? And these ruptures that don't necessarily allow us to glean, to glean from our experiences, to glean from these earlier versions of ourselves, and to be able to like to just move in the world in a way that we feel much safer, right? Because I think part of embracing the multiplicity is also just becoming the chaos, right? If God has changed and you got all this daggone change inside of you, what does it mean then for you to go ahead and be the chaos? Then be it. And
Hmm.
that's again going back to that demon time, especially for
Yeah.
black folk.
Yeah. Yeah, child.
I got
Listen,
people
and
watching. Please type "be the chaos" because some of y'all might think that's a sin. He just said "be
oh, put it on a shirt. Put it
put
on a
it on a
Yeah.
shirt.
shirt. Be the chaos.
Yeah.
Like be it.
And you know something, people will think you're talking crazy. They'll categorize you as crazy, for thinking in this way, right? I think about, for example, Sun Ra, jazz musician, who was pointing us towards these very same, ideas about being in time and being and existing on different planes of time, right? And then choosing not to be, right? Like his ultimate, I guess gesture or conclusion was that I choose not to be, right? Like, what does that mean? And so, yeah, like when I think about multiplicity and the thing, listen, I'm a book, like I love the novels. I'm trained as a literary scholar, like I say, religion, but my first I guess like academic training, is in literature. So I turned to Toni Morrison, I turned to Octavia Butler, I turned to Ralph Ellison, even right with Invisible Man. Those things for me, capture what it means to embody, multiplicity, right? People do think you're crazy, you're different. Yeah, no, seriously. I'm reading the comments as I'm talking to y'all. But yeah, no, I mean, I just one thing that you also that you mentioned, Margaret, that I don't quite have the language for because I'm not a therapist and I don't study,
Oh no.
that's not my lane, right? But can you speak, Margaret, more to the idea of using time and different ideas of time, the idea of the multiverse and different dimensions as a way of healing? Because when I
Yes,
said
I can. Because
that you
and then
offered
you
my
went back to
business,
literature. Oh, I thought
yeah,
you. You say I asked for literature because people.
yeah, no, but because that's not my, like, I can point to speculative texts,
Yeah.
right? Um, but when it comes to like actual research literature, like I don't know that stuff. I
No,
was
no,
just
and I meant speculative because some
okay.
people just need words on paper so they can
Yeah.
feel good about it. Like some people need to read Tony and realize that
Hmm.
beloved is definitely what I was thinking about. It's
Yeah.
skipping through time, you know, and
Mhm.
I mean you skipping through the time and the grief of time.
Yeah. Everyone should be beloved. Child. My mama, I love her to death. My mama made me read Beloved when I was 13 years old. Like seriously. And like that book has been foundational for me. Like my
Yeah.
dissertation, like 2 chapters are gonna be on Beloved for real. And I'm thankful because
And I
yeah,
mean, because
like
how we skip through grief, the invite to skip
mhm,
through grief is crazy for Black people. So what I
yeah.
mean, skipping through time. When we try to, when I work with people of color with trauma, I have to respect time and not respecting the 55 minutes that the insurance company gonna pay me. I have to respect that I'm inviting you to go back to a time and place when somebody told you that you were wrong, you were evil, your body was jacked up, something about your skin was off, something about your body could be abused and mishandled and mistaken. You then went from human to property. Even if it was somebody who looked like you that did that, coming with sexual trauma, you were something I possessed, and I'm asking you to skip back into that time and pull that with you in a healed state, right? So,
Hmm.
oh my God, like what I'm asking you to time travel back to something very painful,
Yeah.
sit with it, befriend it, get along with it, like see it, and then asking you to find some resolve around it through some resource that's internal or external. How insulting is that I'm telling you, got 55 minutes to do it, right? But that's because here are the time constructs that they put on top of us jumping back and forth through time. And I'm asking you to
Hmm.
visit. So when I say literature, yes, it can be speculative. Why? Because what can bring me, what has brought me healing, I guess, like, and something I read recently was Kindred.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting here watching, and this book was written in the 70s, or set in
Hmm.
76, I think.
Yeah, it was written in the 70s and also, of course, then
Yeah.
set in the
But
70s.
but we're watching this jump in time.
Hmm.
And the invite is to go back to painful space
Hmm.
for this Black woman who gotta watch these white people treat her like trash, right?
Yeah.
And manage and mishandle. And but then she jumps back into, like, she just gotta be okay. These are the offerings that we offer to Black people today. Even in our
Hmm.
own, even amongst ourselves, just come out of it. Be done with that. It's gonna be all right. You'll get over it. It's
Can I
so bad. You got police officers,
Yeah.
pictures of
can I
bodies that
say
they kill.
can I
Yeah,
say
go
something
ahead.
real quick? I was I'm,
Mhm.
I'm thinking about earlier when I think said something about the anger that they don't want you to feel,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And now we're talking about the trauma that people that you're saying that people want you to skip over, right? As a Black person, right?
Yep.
I'm and we but look, kind of using this IFS framework, right? Like the wisdom of our bodies comes from sitting with that and really looking at the emotionality. And so when you strip emotionality from Black folks, you're stripping the wisdom, right? And not only you stripping the wisdom, you're stripping the power, like, because emotions come with a certain type of embodiment. Now you're stripping the power that people then use to free themselves, right? And the logics of freedom. Because if you don't feel the the anger, or if you don't feel it and you don't get the wisdom from it, then how do you meant to charge yourself up and then do the work of liberating yourself?
Yeah. Can I can I jump in right quick, Margaret? This is so good because so again, like the example of a literary text being beloved, right? As a way it showcases how time and trauma, are interconnected, right? And you can't skip, the process, the grief process. Now, beloved is not technically categorized as this, but the way I read it is this: it's a slave narrative, really. Like it's a neo slave narrative, and I say that because Traditional slave narratives, such as Frederick Douglass's and Harriet Jacobs and Equiano, they follow a linear time frame. I was born a slave, or for Equiano, he was captured, and brought into slavery, right? But for Jacobs and for Douglass, I was born into slavery. At some point, I realized I was a slave. I I escaped the plantation after a struggle, and then I'm free. That's a very linear, chronological, idea of time, right? From being a slave to freedom. That's not what happens in Beloved. And so that's why I use the word a neo-slave narrative, right? Because freedom is not a linear process; it's a cyclical process. It doesn't begin in slavery. Even the story doesn't. It begins with her, being free, but the memory and the haunting of slavery shows up, at her house, right? Or at Baby Suggs' house. And so it's this constant, again, going back and forth, around and around in time. So therefore then freedom, to your point, as a therapist, Margaret, freedom and liberation and healing, is not a linear, 1-2 step process, right? It may be a cyclical, process whereby you have to go back and forth in time. And it shows up again so beautifully in that text, right? It defies, Morrison is so brilliant. She in that book defies all logics of a slave narrative. Because again, they all follow this traditional born a slave. Oh, I'm a slave. I fought for freedom. I'm free now. That's not what happens in that book, And she's showing us that's not realistic for how emotional wellness, right, takes place. It's not realistic for how healing, and true freedom you have to revisit and sit with, those unspeakable things that took place, right? That we can't even we can't speak it, but it shows up. It manifests in different ways, right? So in the book, it manifests in the form of, the ghost child. Even before that, even before Beloved shows up, it manifests in the form of this red light that inundates the home. It shows up in a white dress, kneeling beside Seth as she's praying, with her child, right? With Denver. It shows up in different, and then it shows up in the memory as well, the actual memory of it. To the point where you got to at some point, exercise it, right, at the end of the book. But yeah, no, again, everyone should read freaking Beloved. There's no way around it. There's no way. And I want to also say this, and I'll shut up. But what Morrison does in Beloved, Butler had her finger on that before her in Kindred. Kindred came first, then came Beloved, right?
Yeah.
I think Butler set the stage to think about, how Black people are pulled in and around and outside of time, right? And then Morrison took that up and pushed it further, right? But yeah, this is fun, y'all.
Yeah, man. No, it is. I mean, why I feel like it's a part 2. So I'm gonna put this out there. I want you all to support. Dr. Butler still didn't, but I'm gonna tell him, if you please support his I think you have your Seeker Foundation. Is a foundation? It's just Seeker Company.
No, it's just the website is called the Seeker Project, and it's funny because the way I was talking about this, one of the critiques people have about Seeker is that they get in a loop, and the whole point, the Seeker is designed to point you back to yourself. And so I think people are used to a certain type of therapeutic conversation where they get to spew everything and hoping that somehow they can find something out of that. But using the IFS framework, it's going to constantly ask you how you feel about this and how do you feel towards it, and asking you what you what wisdom are you getting from this. And it's if the healing is cyclical, then it has to continue to point you back to yourself in this way. But I'm sorry, this is me thinking out loud. But anyway, but yeah, no, you could download Seeker on iOS and Android. There's a couple apps named Seeker apparently, and so it's probably going to be the second one. That's health and fitness, not a website. But Seeker is it's a way to help you process your emotions in real time, and it does it using Black vernacular and centering Black experiences. And so we do this to help folks um, just build better relationships with themselves, so they can live in this multiplicity and within this multiverse, right? As we continue to understand it. Yeah.
Okay. And the way I'm ending up, because I know I made y'all go over an hour. I'm so sorry. This is so good. Like so good. And Reverend Doctor Ambala, what can we do? I know I put your cash app up for people to I was gonna say sew into you. Look, I'm so
Listen,
but how
child.
can we find you and locate you too? Like, cause both of y'all.
Yeah, so I think my website is still up.
Okay.
www.truthistrouble.com. I got that from Toni Morrison. It's a Toni Morrison quote, actually.
Respect.
But listen, so pray for your sister friend because I'm going through this PhD process, and Dr. Butler can tell you because he's gone through it. It is not easy. Okay, it is very taxing intellectually, emotionally, physically, all the things. Right, there's no shortcuts in this process, and so yeah, I'm going to be at the Proctor Conference in Atlanta in 2 weeks,
Okay.
doing a workshop there on Afrofuturism and Black faith. So pull up, I think it'll be streamed as well. It's going to be at the Marriott Marquis, I believe.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, pull up to that, if you're in town, or, like I say, I think it'll also be streaming. If it's not streaming like officially, I'm going to have like something set up to where, you all can join in on my session with Reverend Josh Lazard. He's at Boston University. We're both doing these 2 sessions together. But yeah, that's how you can find me. I'm on all social media platforms. Just trying to get through these exams coming up. So
yes. So okay, and thank you,
I
Dr.
gotta make sure
Butler.
my site still work because I was paying somebody for a while and then life got the life in.
This is why I love my friends. I love healthy holy conversations because the end of it ended off for the podcast. This does go up as a podcast 30 days later, but I think it's funny because just what Amber just said, like all of what you just said. Hope my stuff is still up. Hope y'all pray for
Yeah,
me.
child. Life be life, and I hope DeAndre ain't cut it off.
DeAndre.
You need to call DeAndre. Look, we
Oh, he
calling him
cut it
now.
off.
He might be watching. He gonna be like, I know they ain't put my name. I know they ain't put my name out there. Whatever.
Child.
So, but yeah. So, but I want to thank you all. I definitely, we're gonna have to set up something because y'all. First of all, y'all wrecked everything that I have said on this platform for almost 4 years with this human because I done put a hashtag human. I had some t-shirts made. And now y'all done see us talking about human a construct. And I wanted to get
It
mad.
is.
I was like, keep talking. Like, shut up and sit down and keep talking. Like a good country black church. But it was a beautiful conversation. Y'all see all of the information scrolling. Reverend Amber, your website is
Girl, I gotta pay my bill.
we got the whole Dr. Terrace Robinson on here. She helping me. She my DigiDeacon do it tonight, try to help me out. Y'all please follow and support these beautiful minds. And like I'm not saying it like the movie, like these are souls that they just poured out their soul for y'all. This is their life's work. And y'all got it tonight. I please so in this community, like we try to give, and because truth be told, I don't really know if y'all would get this anywhere else. So I don't know, and so and our community needs it, and people skip out on it. You got Proctor, but I don't know how many people can afford a $400 ticket to go to Proctor.
Girl, that's why I say I'm gonna have to like make sure
so
I'm gonna have my phone, something gonna be set up in that room for because it's very expensive.
So this platform again, I try to bring stuff that our community we cannot hear it, and so we go around spewing things that were designed to destroy us, and that's not the case. And we try to do it in a way that we balance it out. Looking at it from the intersection of spirituality and emotional wellness. And you don't have to be a therapist to be out here. And we done been on here before. No, like what helps our community? It isn't that our community don't read, is we don't know what to read, in my opinion. I don't know what book to pick up. Is this book gonna put me down, or is this book gonna lift me up? So I just don't pick up a book. I don't know if people don't understand what it looks like for Afrofuturism from a transhuman perspective. After tonight, you can get it right here. You can go back and listen to it, because I don't know what that really means. Does that mean something's wrong with me? We literally learned a new term tonight called demon time. Some of y'all gonna go back and be like, Marcus talk about demons on Healthy and Holy. Nah, y'all need to listen to it, because literally Black folks die after 10 p.m. Yeah, that's some silence. Black folks die after 10 p.m. Like, you go outside and a Black man's heart rate gonna go up real fast if the sun ain't up. Why? I need to know if I can make it home. So what that look like, and the way, oh God, Phillip, the way you put that out there, like my skin is already seen as evil. So now I gotta have extra precaution and protect myself. What happens after 10 p.m.? That was powerful, big, powerful. And so, and then what does it look like to work in this Western time? As you said, Amber, I know I can't get my work together.
Western hegemonic time.
Yeah. So like, what does that look like? Because we, I show up 5 minutes late all the time. Not meaning to, but we get in trouble for that. Like, some of y'all got jobs where you got to operate in that time and be there, and they don't really care that you haven't some response to something going on. Like, I don't know how many jobs didn't care about Memphis last week, but you better have been there at 8 o'clock and clocked in, and you could have had a response to it. You know what I'm saying? So this is why we talked about this. Afrofuturism and emotional wellness absolutely go hand in hand, Like, I don't see how we can separate it when we talk about traumatic experience of African Americans jumping in and out of these time frames and seeing what is this positive future look, even as the African American national anthem offers for us to do. How can we move beyond these stony roads that we trodden into happiness and greatness and blessed land? I mean, how can we do that? Y'all singing it all month at your church, and yes, I screwed up the verse, and I don't care. Y'all go look it up. But that's is that we get off of this pain and we move into greatness. So at this time, y'all got any last words? Because if not, we're gonna let these people go and get y'all out of here. So y'all can have a good night. Any last words?
Thank you, Margaret. No,
Not
thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you for inviting us onto your platform. This was fun, and you're doing great work. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, y'all. That reminded me too, the people in the backdrop who work with me, they fuss at me every week. I'm supposed to put this up too. Anyhow, so you see, I'm trying to run this by myself. But if y'all want to talk about something, talk about the conversation. My bad, I tried to end it before and then here's where y'all can support Healthy Holy Conversation. So I won't get the text messages at the end because I see the people watching tonight. But
and thanks to everyone watching too. Like, thanks to the comments and those watching. Like that, this was, y'all were helpful, in commenting and raising questions and whatnot in the comments.
Yes. So, and y'all will be invited back. Don't worry. We got to find a part 2. It might be in the fall. Because y'all blew people's minds tonight, and they're gonna watch the replay, and it's gonna be a whole bunch of comments where they be y'all blowing minds. So again, say y'all last words now that I did my part. Say y'all last words, and
all I got is gratitude. Just gratitude to be able to meet Amber, to be able to be here, to talk to you again, Margaret. It just to sharing the work that I told you earlier today, just the important work that you do. So I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Same.
Y'all welcome back. Y'all, if y'all don't do anything else, please keep your conversations healthy and holy. Stay on the men. And thank you for supporting MLC Consulting and HHC. I love y'all. Thank y'all too for coming tonight. Y'all blew my mind. I got so much stuff I need to go learn. Y'all know I go find some books and go learn this stuff. So I can keep up next time. But now this is beautiful. Y'all had scholarship tonight. Like, don't go out saying they made up something. They had a reference for everything they said. So go look them up. Y'all find them, support them. And I will see you all on the 2nd, March 2nd. We're talking about ethics. So I have America's wellness expert coming on the 2nd. Y'all will see the graphic go up, and we are talking about ethics and emotional wellness. Some of y'all never heard of that. All right. Love y'all.